Hi, good afternoon, everyone. I'm Dawn Jeffries, and I am the moderator of the President's Town Hall with Virginia Tech President Tim Sands. I'd like to welcome you all and thank you so much for joining us. This is our second live webinar, and as always, we are recording this session and we will make that available to you for viewing afterward. Throughout the next 45 minutes, we will talk about and focus on questions and concerns of new and returning undergraduate students during this COVID-19 pandemic. Along with President Sands, we are joined by Vice Provost Rachel Holloway, Vice President of Strategic Initiatives, Menah Pratt-Clarke, and Vice President of Student Affairs, Frank Shushok. We will talk about a lot of the questions many of you are asking and taking questions from you throughout this webinar. So feel free to continue to submit your questions and we'll get to as many as we can during our 45 minutes together. For now, President Sands, would you like to start us off?
Thank you, Don. I'd like to welcome everybody to this student-focused town hall. And first of all, I'd just like to express our hope that you and your family and friends are well and safe. This is a crisis that is ultimately going to impact everyone in some way, directly or indirectly. And we're hoping for the best, and we're thankful that most of you seem to be doing quite well. But we're looking forward to hearing about your stories and your questions, and looking forward to having the opportunity to try to answer those questions. I'd also like to thank those on the front lines. We have healthcare workers, first responders, people who make sure that our food supply is safe, that are really out there doing the work that we all need them to do in order to keep our society running, to keep us healthy and safe. So I'd like to always acknowledge them because while without them, we would really be in trouble. So thank you to those who are doing that work, that very important work. I'd also like to thank the Virginia Tech community, our students, our faculty, our staff, and our alumni, and everybody around our campuses for their adherence to the public health guidelines. It's been amazing watching here in Blacksburg, especially where I spend most of my time now, the adherence to these guidelines, the physical distancing that people are practicing, the staying at home whenever possible, the wearing of masks like this one, whenever you can't physical distance, just extraordinary, and it has made an impact. I think it has really kept the outbreak at bay to a large extent in our Blacksburg area, Montgomery County. Other areas where Virginia Tech's present, it's been tougher for higher density populations. It's always going to be tougher. But the social distancing and physical distancing, if you will, that we're doing, I think is making a huge difference for Virginia. So thank you. I'd say the defining word for what we're experiencing, and especially with our students, is disruption. Our seniors have missed out on the end of their academic year in Blacksburg or wherever they were planning to be this last couple of months of their time at Virginia Tech. And that's incredibly disappointing, I know, for everyone. It's really disappointing too for our faculty and our staff who really enjoy having to essentially have that vicarious experience through our seniors of what it's like to finish your degree and to be together during that period. And that is not possible physically. But we're doing everything we can to make sure that there is a sense of community through the virtual modes that we have through the remainder of this academic year. Virtual commencement, I think, is going to be wonderful. It's not a perfect replacement for in-person commencement, but we've got a great lineup of speakers. You'll enjoy hearing from Camille Schreier, from Bud Foster, and our own poet, Nikki Giovanni, and then experiencing as closely as possible to the actual physical in-person experience, our commencement ceremony in Lane Stadium. So stay tuned for that. I hope you all can participate in that. And I'm glad that actually I think we'll have families and friends that can participate in that couldn't have made the trip to Blacksburg anyway. So it'll be an extraordinary experience, but we know it's not a substitute. We look forward to having our seniors back on campus whenever we can, and we'll keep you in tune on that. We have already announced September 26th football gathering, a tailgate, and that will be wonderful if we can pull it off. We're still waiting to see how the pandemic develops, and we're hopeful that we can get back together in the fall in numbers. Certainly we have the commencement ceremony that we're hoping we'll be able to pull off in person in December, which is the rest of the class of 2020 for the most part. And we're welcoming those who would have graduated in May to come forward and participate in that, and in the following May 2021 ceremony. So I know it's disruptive. You're missing, and not just the seniors, but everybody's missing our campus community experience. April is always an incredible month, and we've missed all those big gatherings on the drill field, but they'll be back. It'll take a while, but we'll be back. So we're looking forward to welcoming you back. Some of you have missed out on summer internships, or at least they're up in the air, and we're looking forward to finding solutions for you and helping you out with that. I know employers are doing everything they can to make sure that as many of those go forward. We have, for those who have had student wage jobs, we have the Student Emergency Fund and the Dean of Students Office. Certainly make yourself known to SOAR, to the Dean of Students Office. They're coordinating with the financial aid folks to make sure that we meet your needs. And so it's one of those things where it's a tough time, but Hokies are amazing. You'll hear from Frank Shushok. You just met him a moment ago, if you don't know him already. He wrote a really nice piece a couple of days ago about the way that Hokies show hope and grit. And I think it's really true. We are an amazing community, and we'll get through this and I think actually be better for it, but that's in the future. Speaking of the future, I know a lot of your questions are around the fall. Those of you who will be returning to Virginia Tech, or are new Hokies who are planning to join us in the fall, everybody's wondering, well, what's fall going to look like? And the bottom line is that it will be determined by the public health guidelines that emerge as we approach the summer and into the summer, to the extent that will determine the extent to which fall is in person. We are certainly hopeful that we'll have everyone back on campus, or at least most of you, those who can. And we're looking forward to making it as normal an experience in the fall as possible. But we really won't know what fall looks like until we think early June. And we're not alone in this. Pretty much higher ed, certainly across Virginia and across the country, everybody's doing the scenario planning. They're stress testing their plans. They're looking for what options might work under these conditions or those conditions. And we expect that those options will converge over the next couple of months. So around early June, we should be able to make some fairly concrete announcements as to what we think the fall will look like. My prediction is that we'll be in person to some degree, hopefully to a great degree, but the way we'll approach it is a little different than what we've done in the last couple of months. We've focused primarily in the last, at the end of the spring semester, on the population. Essentially, how is our student, faculty, and staff population and its interaction with the community, how can we best knock down this pandemic, flatten the curve, limit the length of it and the extent to which it impacts our medical facilities especially. And I think we've done a good job of that. Time will tell. We're close to the peak of the pandemic, according to some of the models. And we'll know, I think, within the next several weeks how effective that work has been. But as we approach the fall, we'll be looking at individuals. We'll be taking a case-by-case approach to this to make sure that everyone's as safe and protected as possible, that individual needs are taken care of. And that's a daunting activity, and we're going to be spending the summer planning for that. So again, expect announcements in early June. We won't be quiet until then. We will have many opportunities for public conversation about how our options are narrowing down, what we're seeing as the future becomes clearer. But I just want you to know that we're all working on that, and we're trying our best to make sure that it is as traditional a Hokie experience as possible. And I'd like to also acknowledge the learning experience that you're all going through right now. Whether you're a Hokie now and are dealing with our remote instruction and working through that, or whether you're an aspirational Hokie or you've already committed, you're dealing with your last year of high school, similar experience. It's remote, it's challenging, but I'm so proud of our students and our faculty and staff for the way they've stepped up to deal with this challenge. The switching to remote instruction was done on a pivot point. We just did it almost overnight. And it's been, I'd say, much more successful than a lot of us thought it would be. But it's not the way we want to go forward. We recognize the benefits that remote instruction offers in terms of flexibility, but it doesn't replace the in-person experience. So I'd just like to thank you for the work that you've done to stay up with your studies, to make sure that you're in contact with your community virtually, and to let faculty and staff and our offices here at Virginia Tech know what you're experiencing so that we can make adjustments as we go. We are also, I just wanted to mention some of the things that we're doing, and you've read about this recently, I think, to leverage the expertise we've got to expand the impact of ProSim on our community. You've heard about the collaboration between engineering and the 3D printing folks and the manufacturing people and Carilion Clinic on creating new options for personal protective equipment and adapting BiPAP machines, some really clever work that's going on there, solving problems on the fly. This week, we announced the development of COVID-19 testing on the Blacksburg campus at the Fralin Life Sciences Institute, and also on our Roanoke campus at the Fralin Biomedical Research Institute at Virginia Tech Carilion. And that's through the Shifford Health Center in partnership with the local Virginia Department of Health. They're preparing to scale to 1,000 tests per day with a 24-hour or better turnaround, and they're already testing. So we're really pleased that the incredible talent among our faculty, staff, and students, expertise in virology, in genetics, in biomedical sciences, we've all been able to pull all that together through great leadership as well. Mike Friedlander in his role, Carla Finkelstein, we've got Harry Sondheimer, go down the list, Matt Holver, and a whole cast of crew that have made this possible. So thank you for showing your ingenuity to solve this problem. It's going to make all the difference in our community going forward. Just let me finish with a couple of comments about our history. Virginia Tech is almost 150 years old. We're coming up on our sesquicentennial in about 2 years. We've persevered through world wars, the Great Depression, and tragic loss. And we've always come through stronger. It's not been easy, but every era that where we've had a crisis like the one we're going through now has resulted in a better Virginia Tech. And it's hard to see that in the moment, but I can see it through the incredible resilience of our community, through the commitment to service first, just extraordinary acts of selflessness to protect our populations, protect our community, and to really utilize all the assets that we have, the privilege that we have in terms of our knowledge and expertise in facilities to really make a difference. So thank you for that. Really, our strengths are rooted in ProSim and also our commitment to the community, and our principles of community outline that. So if you haven't read our principles of community lately, I encourage you to do that. I'd like to now turn it over to Dawn and our senior leaders to start this discussion on the student experience, the student focus on how we're handling this pandemic. Dawn?
Thank you, President Sands. I just wanted to let everyone know that Zoom is actually, and I know you're all familiar with this because we've all been on a lot of Zooms lately, but Zoom is experiencing a few difficulties. So if we freeze up for a moment because of that, we'll get through it, and we'll continue to answer your questions and talk about students. Again, thank you, President Sands. And our focus today, as we've mentioned, is on students, undergraduate students, and how we're all adjusting. Everyone feel free to chime in, but Rachel, I wanted to start with you because we know that this is a challenging time for all of us, but especially for students, particularly when it comes to transitioning to this online learning environment. It can be really challenging for a lot of students who are used to and work really well in that in-person environment in a classroom. Can you talk about what students can do to get support if they're not used to this way of learning, how they could best approach their professors? Actually, Rachel, you're just muted. Thank you. That's all right.
It's like every video spoof. Okay, students, that was your laugh for today. So as we think about, how we can help our students, we tried to work really quickly to move all our resources online. So students, if you go to advising.vt.edu, you're going to find a special link to talk about how you can be successful in a virtual environment. And you'll find all kinds of tips, highlights, things you can do on your own. But we also want you to know that there are still lots of resources for you online. So our tutoring has gone online. We have academic coaches online. The Writing Center is still available to you. We have our librarians there. So don't hesitate to reach out for support if you're finding one of your classes or multiple are giving you some challenges. And we've also made links on that site to our Hokie Wellness area and others where you can gain support as you try to navigate what we all know is a pretty challenging environment. There is a real thing called Zoom fatigue. I was talking to Dr. Shushok about that yesterday. And so look for those tips about how you can manage your school life to make all of that better. I think the other thing I'd suggest you do is follow your faculty's guidance. So many of them have probably on the Canvas site for your course told you how you could best reach out to them. And it may be that there are multiple people to reach out to, graduate teaching assistants, peer assistants. So again, use those resources. Some people are holding Zoom office hours. Please use those. There are discussion boards on Canvas sites. So we're really trying to help you navigate this. Email still works, but as you know, we're all getting a lot of emails. So my advice there would use your subject line wisely. Maybe write need assistance for, and then name the class so that the faculty member can see that and it'll pop up in their inbox. And then if you need additional support, if those things don't seem to be working for you, you can always reach out to that advising@vt.edu. It's an email address that we have many people monitoring. They can reach out to you. And of course, always you can write to the Dean of Students and we can facilitate and support that connection to your faculty if you need it. But no, we really do want to see you succeed. And so any ideas you have, send to us and we'll continue to try to provide those resources.
And Menah, along those same lines, talking about support, I just wanted to ask you, as you know, not every student has the same experience, and there are students that have different challenges when it comes to shifting to online learning or being on campus in general. Can you talk about the work that's being done to help differentiate for those students and to give students who may have different experiences, for giving them support that they need?
Sure. So I think that, the work that we're doing around inclusion and diversity and inclusive VT is recognizing that students, faculty, and staff come from different backgrounds, different experiences, different identities, and have different positionality. So depending on where you're from and your experiences, it might impact your ability to be successful on campus. And so the programs that different offices on campus lead, including the SOAR team that stands for Student Opportunity and Achievement Resources, the community and cultural centers, students, services for students with disabilities, the Dean of Students office. These are all resources for students who might need additional support in order to be successful. And so I think going back to, I really like Dr. Holloway's suggestions. I think the biggest advice that we can give students is reach out for help, because there are many of us here who want to help, we're able to help. We have the experiences, the expertise to provide an ear to help you navigate sort of maybe some complex university structures and situations to help you succeed. And the Dean of Students and the Vice President for Student Affairs, Dr. Shushok, and SOAR have been working to just hear the concerns of students. We've heard from over 200 students who have been economically affected in some way by the current reality and are looking for help and resources. And so the financial aid office has been an incredible success, the emergency fund, and there are hopefully new resources coming into play through the federal government that should help alleviate at least some of the financial pressure. But we recognize that it's not all financial. A lot of it is also personal and just the difficulty of the current experience. And so definitely encourage students to reach out for help and to share the challenges with their faculty members, to also let them know that they're struggling as well.
A lot of students are really worried about grading and grades. And Rachel, I'll turn back to you to ask if you can explain the difference between the new credit, non-credit option. And I wanted to point out as well, a lot of students are talking about pass-fail, and that's actually different.
Right.
The credit, non-credit is actually different from the pass-fail option. Can you talk about that and explain? And I'll tell you as well that a student, one of the questions we have coming in is from a current student who is asking for an overview of the pass-fail option, the pros and cons to that. But again, if you can talk about how that differs from credit, non-credit.
Right. So let me start with our traditional grading modes, because I do need to differentiate. So we always have A to F and we always have pass-fail, and that's still in play. Okay, so those are still there. Credit, non-credit offers a new option. And so it's designed to minimize any negative impact on a student's GPA because of this quick pivot that we've done to online learning. So here's how it works, okay? The faculty are going to assign the grade as usual, A to F. If students have chosen credit, non-credit, then the registrar will convert the grade to another grade. So here's how it works. If you get a C- or better in the class, it'll be converted to the CC grade. You get the credit for the course, and that course will fulfill any degree requirement for your major, your minor prerequisites. If you get a D or a D+, the grade becomes a CD, and that is still credit for the course, and any requirement that would be honored by a D or D+ is honored by that course. So you're getting credit, no impact on the GPA. If you earn a D- or an F, D- is considered a failing grade at Virginia Tech. That grade will appear on your transcript as a CN. And in that case, you don't get credit for the course, but neither will it hurt your GPA. So if you choose credit, not credit, it cannot hurt your GPA. That's what we really designed this all about. The difference with pass-fail is a pass doesn't necessarily fulfill all those progress to degree requirements, major, minor, and other requirements. So that's why we went to this differentiated option. Now, students have the choice for each course, okay? And you can make that choice up until May 6th, and all the instructions, and there's a special video to teach you how to do it on the registrar's website. You can change as many times as you want to through May 6th, but then it will shut down. And that will be your grade option for this term. And so my advice would be to be very clear on what grade you're earning as you go in, as you get near the end of term. Be sure you understand how a final project or a final exam might calculate into your grade so you know where you stand. And then consult with your advisor. You can talk with your advisor about the different options. Of course, we wanted to preserve A to F because some of you, I'm sure, are doing very well in this environment. You're getting those top grades that you want to get. And so we want that to still be there. So you can raise your GPA with A to F. You go to CD, the credit, non-credit, you don't have to worry about a change in your GPA. But again, I'd really suggest you talk to your advisor if you have any questions about how that might best work for you.
And I know that you touched on GPA, no impact on that, but I just wanted to ask this because it is a specific question related to GPA, and to reinforce this to our student that's asking, are there any concerns if a students need a particular GPA to maintain a scholarship or their financial aid? If there's no impact, does that translate to scholarships as well?
It's a little more nuanced, but yes, in general. But again, I would suggest a very direct conversation with the person who has the most understanding of your financial situation. So if the scholarship comes from your department or college, reach out to your associate dean and they can assure you. I know you really want to hear it from the person who is most directly responsible for that. And so they can talk with you about how that works. But yes, the intent is to protect all scholarships. In terms of financial aid, go to that financial aid website. Again, you'll see a link for COVID-19 actions, and they've created a really robust set of FAQs around federal financial aid scholarships. So read through that, and then please reach out to the financial aid counselors. And their email, they're doing the same thing. It's FINAID, financial aid, FINAID, at vt.edu. They have a whole team of people responding to those emails, and they can look at your specific case, understand what kinds of, many of you may have multiple different kinds of scholarships, so they need to do that full analysis for you. But our goal is to advise you in ways that will protect your scholarships, your federal financial aid, or other resources, because we know this is a challenging time for lots of our students and their families. So please don't just worry, do reach out, as Dr. Pratt-Clarke said, because we want to reassure you that we've really looked at your individual case, and you know how best to make all the decisions you need to make.
Great, thank you. And President Sands, I'll ask you a question that's coming in as we're talking about financial aid a little bit there. Can you talk about the CARE Act, the federal relief that has the potential to help students?
I can say a little bit about that. Yeah, it's something that we're working hard on right now. The CARES Act has a component of funding that goes directly to, well, flows through the Department of Education, but it goes directly essentially to the institution. And half of that money is to go to students in financial need, at least half. And for Virginia Tech, our allocation is a little over 19 million. And so half of that, at least, will be directed toward students with financial need. We're in the process of working through our application for those funds. As you might imagine, it's complex, a lot of factors to consider, but we're trying to get through that as quickly as we can. We got our guidance from the U.S. Department of Education this week in terms of the significant questions that I think all of our higher ed institutions had. And we'll be, I think, in a position within the next couple of weeks to announce our plans and to inform students who will be impacted, hopefully in a very positive way, by this portion of the CARES Act. There are a lot of other federal programs that impact the university, but that's the one that's, I think, of most direct and immediate concern, and the opportunity there is significant. So stay tuned. We should be able to answer those questions more concretely in the next several days.
We have a lot of questions about grading coming in. I know this is important to students, so I'll ask a few more. A current student is curious why the university decided that students needed to actually decide whether to take the credit, no credit option before final exams rather than after.
And that was a in-depth discussion with faculty and associate deans. And I believe the general feeling is that we want to be sure that we encourage our students to persist and to do their very best in courses, but that sometimes if we wait until after the term, we're not going to be looking forward to the best decision for the students. So again, I'd ask you just to reach out to your academic advisor and talk through those options and what might be best for you as you go into that final exam period and finish out those projects.
And a current student is asking how the Office of Academic Integrity will continue to maintain the principles of the Honor Code and academic conduct in this digital environment we find ourselves in now, and how faculty is being advised to look at this issue as well.
Right, so the Academic Integrity Office is open and working, and we are resolving cases currently. Most of them are being resolved through the faculty student resolution process, which I'm very pleased we have in this circumstance because it allows us to continue to work with the faculty and students as issues come up. And we will be, operating as best we can through the end of term and into the summer. Of course, it's a little challenging when shifting some of our processes online, but we're continuing to work on that. We're advising our faculty. We're doing a series of workshops, and we've been convening faculty about how best to maintain academic integrity, especially around exams, and thinking about alternative forms of assessment, ways that you can provide and construct final exams. Some of you may find that your faculty are actually shifting a little bit from what was happening maybe at the beginning of the term to the end of term, because it is a very important consideration. Abiding by our principles of academic integrity is what maintains the value and integrity of the degree. So I know our Hokies are committed to the honor code and are supporting one another in that. Again, if you are participating in a class and you're not sure now how those honor code principles might apply, absolutely contact your faculty member so you don't inadvertently make a misstep that could lead to some kind of challenge. So it should be an ongoing discussion between students and their faculty members. And if you have any concern, please either obviously reach out to your faculty member, but don't hesitate to contact the honor code and ask questions so that you're sure you're abiding by best practice.
Thank you. And I think, Frank, this next question is directed at you. It comes in online from a student with a resident advisor appointment wanting to know if Virginia Tech will honor employment and housing commitments should fall classes end up being online, or whether the students need to make alternate living arrangements once classes resume.
Well, that is a great question. And I think the key thing is that the point related to what the format will be in the fall. But one thing that we know for sure is that if we're in a residential format in the fall, we're going to need our resident assistants. We're going to need students in the ways that we have previously. So the key thing is if you could hang tight with us until we make some decisions based on the information that we have, and then we'll be in touch as soon as possible. We won't make you wait all summer to understand where things are going to fall. We'll communicate regularly with you. And the most important thing that you remember is that you remain a key part of the Virginia Tech experience that we will be crafting in the future.
And talking about off-campus students for a bit, Frank, several returning students as well as their parents are wanting to know if they should sign off-campus leases for the fall semester, since obviously decisions can't be made until we see how this will pan out. What kind of direction can you offer them for making those decisions?
Well, I've had a couple of conversations with people in town recently, and I do think there is supply. I know that often people feel anxious about signing a housing a lease or finding their housing or nailing that down. My best advice and encouragement is to be a little bit patient. I think that you can wait a little bit to make a decision, and I think we'll be letting people know where we stand as soon as we're able. So maybe it's to be a little patient, and it's also important to remember we will return at some point. We just don't know exactly when that is, and so those decisions are going to be pretty unique to particular families and what your needs are in your current situation. So I'd weigh all that together. Get the advice of other people that you trust, and try to make decisions at a time that works well for you.
Great, thank you. President Sands, we've said about fall into decisions and when that might come, but can you talk about or answer to many of the folks that are asking about fall tuition and what that might look like? And wondering more specifically if classes are online, if the university is considering any sort of freeze or discounted tuition and as well reducing costs for out-of-state students if they have to take instruction online as well.
Oh, that's a good question. We don't have the answers to that quite yet. We are thinking about the future in terms of what the options might be for students. Will they, some of them be remote, and in which case we need to think differently perhaps about fees. But I think a good assumption going forward is that tuition rates probably won't be different. There's a certain fixed cost there. In fact, online and remote is actually more expensive, and doing it hybrid, which is likely to be a scenario we're in, where a lot of courses are offered both ways, will be even more expensive. So we're still working through that. I think the more immediate decisions around tuition and tuition rates will be made shortly. We've got a couple of Board of Visitors meetings coming up, one in May and then one in June. We won't have all the answers to what the fall looks like for either of those meetings, but I think we will be able to provide some level of certainty about what the tuition rates are going to be going into the fall sometime in the June timeframe. So we'll keep working on that. We hear what people are saying. Our approach is we want to provide the best experience we can academically, whether a student is remote or on site or in some kind of a hybrid mode. So stay tuned and we'll provide guidance as we get closer.
Thank you. And I'll ask this of any one of you to respond to. And we know that a lot of our faculty or professors are really transitioning and made this transition in some really creative ways. If people are keeping up with the stories that we're doing and the university is sending out, we see a lot of examples of that. But this parent is asking, and we know this to be true, this architecture student parent is talking about a lot of the engagement and the conversation that happens in a studio environment and how important that is. And if a student is a bit shy to ask for help, perhaps, how they can reach out, how anyone could reach out to a student if they see a student struggling or having trouble not being in that environment.
You all want me to start and then you can think about it?
You have the floor.
So we really encourage our faculty, and we have been receiving this kind of notification. If faculty notice that a student isn't engaging as much as they were maybe before we did the pivot, they aren't participating on Canvas, we've been asking those faculty to let us know. And it's common practice for our Student Success Center, our advisors, our Dean of Students to do a direct outreach to those students just to check in. And we've actually launched a couple of campaigns where we are intentionally reaching out to students who, for one reason or another, we aren't quite as engaged. And we are getting responses back. I guess I would suggest that if there's a concern like that, a parent is concerned, a friend is concerned, please let us know. At the Dean of Students really is our first triage point. And then Byron Hughes and his staff then bring in other people who might be able to assist, and that may be an advisor, it might be an associate dean, it might be a member of the SOAR team, depending on what connections that student has. We really do want to reach out. It has been difficult to maintain that sense of community and communication that we all value so much in the face-to-face format. Lots of people are being very creative. I'm excited to see the Zoom office hours, students setting up their own study groups, coming together in lots of different ways. So please, anyone that is concerned about a student, let us know so we can reach out directly to the student and maybe provide a little extra support. I'm sure Frank and Menah have ideas as well.
I just came from a meeting where they encouraged us not to use the term social distancing, but to begin to really conceptualize it as physical distancing. And I think President Sands in his remarks mentioned that. But I think if we can move towards that lens of seeing it as just being more physically separate, but not socially distant, and understand the different tools and techniques and strategies for reaching out, and even picking up the phone these days is also a very good thing. I think sometimes it's reaching out to faculty, but I think it's also our friends. We can become more distant than we need to be in our own homes. And I think knowing that it's probably even more important now to pick up the phone, to call, and to reach out to other people, to stay connected, to get advice, to get suggestions. I think that's particularly critical as we're physically distant, but we don't need to socially distance ourselves.
Yeah, and I think I would like to jump in on that, Dawn. One of the things that Menah talk really strikes a chord with me is that the movement away from the language of social distancing and thinking more about social solidarity And you're part of this incredible network of faculty, staff, students, and alumni that we call Hokies. And I think more than ever, we need to tell people what we need and to reach towards one another. I heard a great story about a student who was struggling just to make ends meet because it lost several small jobs, told someone who told another someone that's in the Hokie community. And now that person's working over at their house in a pretty regular way. So tell people what your needs are. And again, if you don't know where to start, always start by calling the Dean of Students office and tell them what your needs are and where you're struggling. We want to be here to help you. Yesterday, I walked around campus and you weren't here. And I think all of us are yearning to reach towards you. And I also wanted to mention that Student Affairs is in the process right now. We just decided we wanted to reach out and call 1,500 students, just to call them up and see if we can schedule a Zoom conversation with them, because we want to better understand what some of your needs are, what some of your questions are, and then respond in ways that are helpful to you. So keep the information going. You got to know that we care deeply about you. And for those of you that are incoming students to Virginia Tech, we can't wait to have you here. There will be a day when you come back to Virginia Tech and be physically on campus with us. But in the meantime, the community is intact 100%. And we are going to reach towards you, but please reach towards those of us that are still on campus in a virtual format.
Thank you, Frank. And talking about student support is just so important. And I wanted to ask this earlier, if we could talk a little more about this, because both Rachel and Menah, you mentioned it. And Menah, I'll turn back to you. Can you talk about the SOAR program a little bit, Student Opportunities and Achievement Resources, and its role in this COVID-19 environment?
Sure. We just know, just from doing the strategic plan, that certain students are just more vulnerable. They're just more vulnerable. They come from different backgrounds and they need some type of additional support or help navigating the university's resources. And so what that program has done is to partner with colleges to think holistically about how we support students to achieve their full potential. And in this particular crisis, it has meant reaching out. We've emailed students, we've called students, and, you know, in response to the current crisis, reached out and said, what do you need? And we heard from over 200 students specifically about their financial needs. In particular, we learned that some students were working 2 to 3 jobs. Some students were taking 22 hours trying to finish the semester. Some students had gone home to complicated family situations with siblings and parents. And so we learned a lot in terms of what our students are trying to navigate in this very short pivot, as we're calling it. And so the team has been, it's a team of what we call coaches. So they're just SOAR coaches that have been working in partnership with every other office. So in partnership with the Dean of Students, in partnership with colleges, in partnership with financial aid, to really be an advocate for that student, to try to get the student the support that they need. They've also worked with the counseling center to continue hosting counseling hours. So there was a group of students that were coming together for group counseling. So we've continued to do that, hosted some Instagram live sessions just to bring students together. So there are a variety of strategies that the office is using to reach out to students who may be more vulnerable for a variety of reasons. Particularly now it's economic, but sometimes it's their different identities with the community and cultural centers as well, and their backgrounds to make sure they have the support they need to be successful.
Great, thank you, Menah. This question I think comes in and it's directed at you, President Sands, but I really think it's one that each of you can touch on. A faculty member is asking what specific lessons you've learned during this crisis that you hope the university will carry on after this has passed.
Well, that's a great question. I reflect on our strategic plan and our Beyond Boundaries vision that we set out in 2015. And when we have time, and often we're busy dealing with the moment, but when we have a moment to reflect, it's really interesting to look at how that strategic vision that was coming together over the last couple of years is going to be accelerated coming out of the COVID-19 crisis. I mean, it's not that I am glad we are dealing with this hard, completely the opposite, but you have to take advantage of what you're learning. And one of the things that I'm really pretty enthused about is the forced pivot to remote learning is helping us build some tools. It's not the way you'd love to do it. You'd love to take time and spend 5 or 10 years getting that right. But I think we will have advanced 5 or 10 years in our knowledge about how to do that work over the last 6 months or so, or as this crisis wanes. The idea there is really that faculty and students and staff could be anywhere in the world and still be connected to Virginia Tech. You could have an internship or study abroad or a co-op or apprenticeship somewhere else outside of Virginia or outside of Blacksburg and still take classes, to still stay up with your coursework, or conversely, you could be a faculty member who is doing work in a community in some other continent and still able to teach your course. And so I think we're going to be advancing along the pathway that we established for that generational vision of Beyond Boundaries. And we're using the strategic plan that came out of that to identify those opportunities and to make sure that we preserve them if finances become very tight. So it's all hand in hand. We're trying to learn as much as we can as we go through and navigate this pandemic.
And we are about at our time, but I wanted to ask you one question, a really important one that's coming in, President Sands, from someone, a couple people actually asking about your background there on
Well, you saw it blacked out there for a second, so you probably know I'm not sitting outside next to some hokey stone pillars, but this is created by one of our talented web designers and artists, Sarah Simpkins, who put this together. But it's going to become my new Zoom background, I think.
Well, I love it. Thank you, President Sands. Thank you to Rachel Holloway, Menah Pratt-Clarke, and Frank Shushok. Thank all of you for your insight and all of your work. And thank you to everyone watching with us this afternoon. Please remember, you can find the latest COVID-19 information on the Virginia Tech website. You can get that right at vt.edu. Again, a reminder, this will be or has been recorded, and you'll be able to watch again after. Thank you so much.